Alrighty, this is going to be fast and loose, and we're going to strike while the iron is hot. It is the end of the day. I have almost lost my voice. And Justin Trudeau is no longer the Prime Minister of Canada. Well, he's announced his resignation. He's still technically the Prime Minister of Canada, but his intent is to resign, and Parliament is prorogued till the end of March, and it's still as bad as it ever was. But as he steps down, what's going to happen is commentators from left, right, and center are going to tear this guy apart on everything. They're going to tear him apart on the carbon tax, on how he staffed his cabinet, on all his policies, on stuff all the way back to the time that we can't talk about online, where everyone got sick, that kind of stuff. And I want to make sure from this channel's perspective, because we talk about the church and technology and online and that kind of stuff, I want to make sure that one thing that Justin Trudeau did doesn't just get kind of like memory hold in a way that the internet tends to do. What I want to do is I want to make sure everyone knows that the reason why your church likely has an online service right now, likely has a pastor that kind of greets you in the bumper before and after that pre-recorded service gets played as live, even though it isn't live. The reason why that happens now is because of Justin Trudeau. Justin Trudeau's reaction to the time that we cannot talk about online, lest we get banned. Justin Trudeau's reaction and policies are what pushed the idea, the false dichotomy, that online is a form of Orthodox Christian worship, that you can go to church online. You can't. I detail that out in the rewrite of my book, Online as It Is in Heaven. I'm going to be doing more work on that topic and that kind of like false idea as my writing continues and stuff like that. But the reason why we're even having that conversation, or the reason we're even having online pastors or online church for the most part, is because of Justin Trudeau, in Canada at least, is because of Justin Trudeau and his policies during the time we can't talk about. And how they played out on the church, because it was given to us as a false dichotomy that during that time you could either go against health mandates and meet in person, or you could meet online, and that was the dichotomy. And it wasn't a dichotomy. There was another option. The other option was to faithfully not meet because you couldn't meet online. That if you felt in your conscience that it would be betraying people's best interest to meet in person during a health crisis, that you don't meet. And instead, you meet online. Instead you don't meet instead of meeting online. And the reason why that's important to note is because the idea that you can meet online to do church, that you can gather online, that you can do church, that you can do communion by everyone taking the bread and juice at home at the same time, that kind of stuff, that was used as leverage to vilify and later arrest and charge pastors who chose not to move their services online. Those pastors were jailed because they wouldn't move their services online, and having online as an option was used as kind of like the moral measuring stick to allow them to say, hey, because you could go online, but you're a bad person. And so we're going to make sure that you get put in jail because you're exposing people to a sickness during the time we cannot talk about online. And the reason why we can't talk about it online is because of stuff that Justin Trudeau did in Canada. The restrictions that were placed on Canada, on free speech, all that kind of stuff. And so, as we talk about online church, the reason that exists is because of that false dichotomy. And that false dichotomy only exists because of those policies. And it was given to the church as a way for them to, weather the storm, a way for them to kind of like, establish a new normal for their practices. And it was at the very best, most charitable interpretation, heterodoxical for us to be doing what online church is. And at the very worst, it was just open heresy. And it was used to declare that certain pastors doing exactly what they had done since the beginning of their church's founding, that was wrong. Pastors who, I will add, were 100% acquitted of all the charges that were levied against them because of the health measures that they disobeyed. They were found not guilty on all charges. They were doing the right thing, and everyone doing the online church at the behest of the government wasn't doing the right thing. They were just doing what the government asked them to do. So, that's an important thing to recognize, that if we're going to say that online church was the right thing to do, then the people who were acquitted of all wrongdoing can't possibly have done the wrong thing. And that's where we find ourselves way down the line, years later, as we've all tried to forget what happened during the pandemic. But the reason why this is a big deal is because the reason you have an online service is because those government policies were kind of filtered into the churches to get them to do what the government wanted them to do. Barna reported during that time that 96% of the churches moved their churches online, moved their church services online in some form or way of another. That 96% of the churches moved online, and the other 4% risked getting sent to jail in order to be able to do what they wouldn't have been sent to jail a month prior, simply because of health concerns. And I understand that there's a lot of tension around that, but having been not found guilty of wrongdoing during that, they clearly did the right thing. And the 96% of us that moved our churches online might have some thinking to do about that. Because that's 96% of churches don't agree on anything. They don't agree on women in eldership, on baptism, on age of baptism, on what baptism means, on the Eucharist, on whether or not we should have wine or grape juice. They don't agree on church eldership structure. They don't agree on church membership. They don't agree on premillennialism, postmillennialism. They don't agree on which Bible translation to use. They don't agree on anything, but 96% of churches moved their churches online, and a great number of them kept it that way. Why? Because the government told them to. This government that's leaving, a government that is rife with controversy, has had more non-confidence votes than any other sitting prime minister ever, who has incurred more debt than any other prime minister ever, who has lost most of his cabinet because they just lost confidence in the man himself. And this guy is finally on his way out. And all that kind of drama and controversy and all his, failed ideas and all his controversial bills and all his controversial taxes, that's what's going to just flood the zeitgeist right now. Everyone's going to be talking about that. And no one's going to be talking about in Canada how the reason we have online church is because of what he decided to do to the church global in Canada during the time that we cannot talk about. Okay, and that's a very big deal. We can't forget how church changed over the last 5 years, because it's a big deal. We can't just move our churches online because a government tells us to move our churches online. And we shouldn't have done that in the first place. And the reason why it is a big deal is because it wasn't the church doing that. There was no council of, C19. There was no council to decide that we need to find a new way for churches to meet in this unprecedented health crisis. There was no council. We were told what to do and we listened. That's what happened. That's clearly what happened. And so as we look back on those times, we have to realize that that's the reason we did that. That's the reason we were told to do that. And there was no council, there was no ecumenical unity. There was, adherence to a government telling us how to do church as Christians. And that is the legacy of Justin Trudeau as it comes to church. That's the thing that we have to worry about. So just so everyone's clear on that, just so everyone kind of sees how that's going on. We do have to recognize that it wasn't a unity thing, that it wasn't clearly a safety thing, since those pastors that got arrested for not being safe were acquitted of all charges. We have to recognize that it has fundamentally changed how we look at church, and that might not be a good thing. And hopefully, with Justin stepping down, with government changing, and with enough time spent in an era where we might have online church, that might be something that we finally start taking a look at and fixing. So I decided to make this video with strike while the iron's hot. I know it's going to be like everyone's going to be putting, Justin as a hashtag, or Trudeau resigning as a hashtag and stuff like that. And I am too, because I want people to realize that we need to critically look at how online church is affecting and has affected the church globally, because it simply would not have happened without people like Justin making it happen for the church. That this wasn't something that we decided to do. This isn't an ecumenical unity issue. This is how the government changed church, I would argue, for the worse during a pandemic. Now I said the word. Now they're going to block this video. Anyway, I just wanted to put that out there and use this as kind of a springboard to remind everyone that the reason why we have online church in any regard is not because we needed online church, is because we were told to do online church by people who aren't involved with the church and shouldn't be involved with the church. So take that to your churches. Go talk to your pastors and your elders and ask them, why do we do online church? Why do we have online services? And what is the purpose behind it? What is the theology behind it? How do we gather online when online isn't a place? Because it's a thing. It is an interconnected network of things. Those kinds of ideas. These are going to get more and more prevalent and more affecting as we start to look at them. Now that the people who got us into that situation are no longer part of the equation. And that's something I want to make sure stays on top of mind as everyone tries to memory hole how tremendously bad of a leader this guy was, and the effects that he had on Canada and the Canadian church.